right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 10th video note recording. I think we're going for record here. And we are, again, continuing our focus on what's happening inside our bodies when we're healthy and sick. And this question if cells have a degree in chemistry. Because our cells constantly are adjusting molecules involved in chemical reactions. And of course, to keep us alive, they have to do these things all the time. So the question is, do they have a degree in chemistry? Let's keep moving forward and let's look and think about cells keeping us healthy. Let's think about all the molecules and atoms involved, or the chemistry involved in our body. And let's see if we can't learn a little bit more about these problems. So here is beautiful slide 48. And slide 48 is just for interest. It says your whole body is a collection of chemically bonded atoms. And you can see here, this picture shows many, many atoms that make the human being. And they make our cells. In fact, this little picture, I know it's small, maybe on your screen, but it shows atoms making cells, cells making tissue, making organs, making systems to our overall body. So the atoms themselves are chemically bonded and are making our cells. Now our cells are complicated too. And there's lots of different styles of molecules, lots of different categories of molecules that make our cells, and we will soon be talking about those. Look and think about this number. It says 10 to the 14 atoms in a typical human cell. It says another way of looking at that is there's 100 trillion atoms to make a single cell. 100 trillion atoms to make a single cell. And our bodies are made up of hundreds of trillions of cells. It's pretty astonishing. Just take a moment to think about that. All right, let's check out this great TED Talks YouTube video about unseeable biology, the tiny molecules that build our cells and that are part of our cells and do important work. Now, this gentleman is an accomplished biologist, and he also designs computer graphics. And he wanted to try to create great computer models of what all these complicated molecules look like that are making our cells, that are inside our cells, and that keep us alive. So he's first introducing us to a very special molecule, a very important one. And he designed this computer model to show the atoms that make DNA. Later in the video, he shows us a microscope image of a real cell. So this is a real microscopic image of a cell. And then he added a computer graphic to show a chromosome being moved around inside a cell. So this cell is going to divide, and it has to move chromosomes, or its DNA, around to the right location. So each cell, when this thing divides, gets equal number of chromosomes. But what he did was he created a computer model to show what it looks like when the molecules are moving these chromosomes around. So let's take a look at that. So we isolate within the cell. We're looking at just a computer model now of what some chromosomes look like, which are DNA. And he wants you to focus on these red zones, because where these red zones are some crazy complicated molecules that are moving these chromosomes around inside the cell. So now we're zoomed into what he's colored in his model, this computer model, red. And just look at this. Just take this all in. According to research, these are all non-living molecules doing important jobs. The different colors represent how the molecules are functioning, but just look at the movement. We have lots of molecules moving around, doing work. They're doing work inside a cell. They're literally different types of molecules that can move, like these protein or motor protein molecules. And they're transporting materials around. They're building things so that the whole chromosome can be moved around in the cell. These are little molecular machines all doing crazy complicated work inside our cells. So why not should we spend time to investigate these really complicated molecules and just try to learn more about them? So I hope you find it pretty trippy, and I hope you find it as interesting as I do to think that all these molecules are moving around doing work inside our bodies. So soon in the future, we'll start talking about what these types or categories of molecules are and what they do for us. Right, we're going to change pace a little and think about ecology. We're going to think about the element carbon and how it's cycled through the environment. This is slide 49. Please write slide 49 in your notebook. Now, when we hear the word cycle, we think circle, and you can see this carbon is involved in a cycle of going over and over again through the environment. Carbon travels throughout living things and non-living things. Carbon elements are amazing. Here's an example. Plants are grown using carbon. Plants contain carbon. When we eat the plants, we eat their carbon. And eventually, through our digestive system, we excrete or flush some of that carbon down. That sewage eventually ends up as soil. Now, all that carbon that we flushed becomes soil, and the plant will use that soil and the carbon in it to grow and to build its cells, build its body. So its cells and body are built from the carbon from the soil. Again, once the plants grow, we eat them again, consuming their carbon again. We flush that down again, and before you know it, it's once again that carbon is found in the soil that plants will once again use as nutrients and minerals and to build their cells. That carbon's very important. But you can see the carbon's flowing constantly, and there really is no end. Now, there's another important cycle that carbon is involved in, and that is photosynthesis, or plants using carbon dioxide to make energy. Now, before we describe photosynthesis too much, let's look at this graph. This graph shows fossil fuels produce lots of carbon dioxide. In fact, if you measure the amount of carbon dioxide here, it greatly outweighs the amount of carbon dioxide plants absorb. But it's kind of interesting to think about plants absorbing carbon dioxide from the fossil fuel use and removing all that excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that we know is building up, because you can see right here, there's lots. This bar is much bigger. Lots of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And we know plants can absorb it for themselves. So we see a cycle here. Carbon dioxide produced into the atmosphere, plants absorb that carbon dioxide, and that kind of closes that loop of carbon dioxide getting pumped over more and more into the atmosphere. Let's see if we can't create a cycle from this chart. So in your notebook for slide 49, draw these circles, take half a page to do it, make them large, and then connect the circles with arrows, and then we're going to write inside these circles. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things to write in these circles. But you have to think about what order you'll put them in for this. I'll give you an example. It starts, pick one of these bubbles to be the starting bubble in this cycle. The first one will be cars release carbon dioxide. So in one of these bubbles, you need to write cars release carbon dioxide, just like you see here, cars releasing carbon dioxide. And then think after that, what would be the next step in this cycle? And then what would be the next after that? And see if you can't complete a cycle using this chart and the idea of carbon dioxide moving throughout the environment. Here's a helper model. This was drawn and available on the internet. And you can see factories and cars produce lots of emissions, or they release carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere. And all that carbon dioxide gas can be potentially absorbed by plants during photosynthesis. So they can actually reduce some of this carbon dioxide pollution into the atmosphere. They can remove it because they use it for photosynthesis to grow and to make food for themselves. So they can potentially reduce climate change caused by extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is slide 51, and there's an activity here for us to complete. So please, in your notebook, copy down the number slide 51, and then let's see if we can answer this question. Now, this question involves photosynthesis. We see this question, and then we'll investigate this model to try to better understand the question. It says, what 3 resources are needed for a producer to make glucose? In other words, to do photosynthesis. So if you put all this together, it will equal photosynthesis. In fact, this entire model explains the process of photosynthesis. Now, right here, I give you little hints, these little icons here, okay? So let's follow the model and figure out what this is. This says water. So in your notebook, you would write blank plus blank plus blank equals this. And you would label this. So, and we'll talk about what this is, so it's not so hard to draw. So the first thing is water. Water plus, and you see this symbol here, sunlight. So water plus sunlight plus, and you can see here the thing that's needed. These are carbon dioxide molecules, so plus carbon dioxide equals, and it's glucose. So photosynthesis is when a plant takes water plus sunlight plus carbon dioxide, and it makes glucose, or food for itself. All right, let's move on. We have slide 52 here. Slide 52 is a great example of how plants use photosynthesis. So for slide 52, let's copy down this. It says plants breathe in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. And yes, we know that. We've talked about it a lot. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. But they say they also breathe it out. They breathe out carbon dioxide for respiration. You may have thought only humans breathed out carbon dioxide, but nope, apparently plants do that as well. So plants breathe out carbon dioxide just like us. Let's look at this model and see if we can't find it. So we have sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide being absorbed by the plant, and photosynthesis occurs. We know photosynthesis occurs because the plant has made glucose, or food for itself. But what's interesting and what we don't talk about a lot is that when the plant uses the glucose, it's just like us eating sugar. It uses the glucose for energy inside its cells, and then when it's doing this, it's called respiration. So anytime an organism is taking energy, like from glucose, and powering its body with it, it's engaging in respiration inside its cells. And the mitochondria is where that happens inside the cells. This is a structure inside the cells. When it does this, the plant actually breathes out carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So plants may absorb carbon dioxide, but they can also release it during plant respiration. You can see it right here. So plants actually breathe it out. You can see plants, when they engage in respiration, when they use the sugar they made in photosynthesis, they actually breathe out carbon dioxide. So that's the cycle. The cycle is factories produce carbon dioxide, photosynthesis helps the plants absorb the carbon dioxide, but then the plants release the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere again. And the carbon dioxide they breathe out may actually be used again for them to do photosynthesis later to make more sugar. And the cycle goes on and on. Here is our final slide for this video. It's slide 54. Please write slide 54 in your notes. And we're going to look at this little comic strip model of something very important. It says right here, and let's copy this down, it says plants use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. And that results in reduction in climate change, but it also, when plants use carbon dioxide, it also reduces acid rain. So this arrow going down means we have a reduction in climate change, or we slow climate change, but also when plants use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, it helps with acid rain. And this is how. You have a factory, produces carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and if the plants absorb the carbon dioxide, there'll be less in the atmosphere to cause that acid rain, which harms